What was something you saw you were definitely not supposed to see? I found my dad's will. I was on his computer while he was at work, actually I'm searching for his porn, and ended up finding a strangely titled Word document. At first it didn't seem like a big deal. It contained a note to each of his kids. It wasn't until I got to the last one, my youngest brother, that I realized it wasn't just a will. The start of that line reads something along the lines of, "If anything is going to make me change my mind now, it's writing this part." I realized I had found my dad's suicide note. I was about 14 or 15 at the time, and I had no idea how to go about talking to him about it. I decided to just keep it to myself. He started buying us gifts and stuff, and I would get really scared, and I still just kept it to myself. I remember one day on the weekend I woke up in my bed to loud bang coming from my dad's room. I laid there in bed for probably half an hour frozen. Once I worked up the strength, I went to his room and opened the door. He wasn't in the bedroom. I was so confused until I saw that the bedroom window was open. What had happened is that there was a gust, and the wind had slammed the door shut, but my paranoid brain had heard a gunshot. After that I was laughing hysterically, and I don't have much memory of the day past that. Shortly after this incident, my dad had returned most of the gifts he bought us kids, and I slowly started to believe that he had changed his mind. I never confronted him about it until last year, about 14 years or so later, but I never fully accepted that he was okay now. I called him distraught about a separate matter, and he started talking to me about depression. He told me on his own about he had considered taking his life, and went into detail about it, and all I could do was cry and tell him, I know. We talked a lot longer after that, and we were finally able to put it all to rest. Growing up with my little brother and single mom, we never had a lot, but she made sure we always had a safe and decent place to live, and there was always food on the table. She never really ate much. I remember dinners of baked chicken, beef stew, salmon. It was a lot cheaper a million years ago. Good food, nothing terribly extravagant, but always nutritious, yet she barely ever ate. When I was 10, I saw her eating peanut butter and jelly on crackers in her room after dinner. That's when I realized there was never enough food for all three of us. She would cook what we had for my brother and I, and she would eat the bare minimum, always out of sight, so that my brother and I wouldn't worry about the actual level of poverty we were at. I never asked for another material thing from her after that night. When I was in college, I worked at an arcade/mini golf joint that seemed to give zero ducks about actually making money, but was never in any kind of financial trouble. When I got hired, the owner literally said, I pay minimum wage, and I expect to get minimum work for it. I worked the front counter, and collected money for the mini golf and sold cups of coins, or you could just use the coin changer. The till was completely busted, and would be off by $50 or more in either direction no matter what you did. I realized very quickly that I could just pretend to ring up golf fees and cups of tokens and pocket the cash, so I'd pocket $30 to $40 every shift, and nobody seemed to give a shit. One of the assistant managers let me take a break 20 minutes after I'd just taken a break, because some of my friends had shown up and wanted to smoke a bowl with me. He was like, that is totally more important than your job. It was awesome. Then one day I walked into the owner's office while his secretary was recording figures in the ledger. I can read upside down pretty well, and it was very obvious that the figures she was recording had duck all to do with the business we were doing. We sold maybe $60 of golf fees a night, and maybe $100 in coin cups, but she was recording $600 and $1,000 for each. I commented on the discrepancy, and quipped about how someone would think we were in the laundry business, and she got really squilly and told me to leave the office. The next day the owner called me into his office, and we had a very circumspect conversation about how much I was enjoying working there and enjoying the perks of the job, and I very much got the sense that he was trying to decide if I was going to tell anyone anything. Apparently he decided I wasn't, and so I kept working there. About a year later the owner was arrested for money laundering, and we all got fired. Still the best job I ever had. The mob is an A+ employer, would work in fake business again. As a middle schooler, I picked up a book at the library, flipped through the pages, and found an application for a replacement birth certificate for some old man. It had every detail about his personal identification on it, so naturally I took it home thinking, I'll just hold on to this in case I ever need to assume a fake identity by pretending to be an 80-year-old man and flee the country. My mom found it, and had to explain to me that, no, we don't steal people's identities. I was working part-time at a library for a school subject. One day, they made me enter the data for new books into the library's computer system. As I worked, I did something, don't know what, that made Windows Outlook display onto the PC screen, along with some emails by the librarians directed to my teacher and to the other librarians. The emails basically said that I was really good at my job, and very hardworking, and that the collaboration would be very beneficial both for me and them. I wasn't supposed to read those messages, but they made me feel really happy. When I was 8 or so, my old nanny/babysitter, choose which you prefer, was showing me a video of her time with her boyfriend in Paris. After it blacks out for a few seconds, it then suddenly cuts to her lying on her hotel bed completely naked, legs spread, telling her boyfriend to come get it. She jumped out of her seat, tried to cover my eyes, and told me to never tell anyone. I have now told potentially thousands of random strangers. So, I'm fresh out of school and taking a gap year before starting university. I'd managed to get a job working for the USAF at an airbase in the UK. Details of the job aren't important. So, about 2 AM on this particular night, in early 1988, the runway lights that are normally off come on briefly, for perhaps 30 seconds, then go off. That's when I hear something clearly landing on the runway, and off to the right of the runway, one of the larger hangars opens its doors. In the pitch black, the light from that hangar is quite spectacular. That's when I see it. A small black triangular aircraft rolls straight into that hangar, and within seconds the doors close behind it. This was my honest thought when I saw that. I was definitely not supposed to have seen that. I put my cigarette, hey, I was young and dumb, out and walked back into my building. A few weeks later, we got our first pictures of the F-117 Nighthawk, followed by a confirmation it existed. I smiled a little and thought to myself, already knew about that. When I started a new job, someone had left a bunch of HR files on the computer I was given. I opened one up, not sure what it was, and I got to see every employee's salary in the company. Even the CEO. The next day, it was gone. My boss realized his mistake and logged into my system and deleted the files. It was a memorable experience. Something similar happened twice to me. I'm not in HR, and I grabbed a binder off the shelf that appeared to be empty, that I was going to use for prepping and RFP. Printed Excel spreadsheet of every employee's salary. 5 years later, my boss sends me a budget spreadsheet for the entire team including my peers. I'm making my own adjustments for my team, and realize there are hidden columns. Unhide. And that's when I asked for a raise. When I was 14, a friend hosted a birthday party at his house with all the parents invited. Needed to use the restroom, but the main one was occupied, so my friend told me I can use the one in his mom's bedroom. As I walked up to the door I could hear somebody in there, so I decided to wait until whoever was in there was finished. A good 10 minutes later, my friend's mom, who was hosting the party, and another good friend's stepfather walk out, and see me standing there all confused. They asked what I was doing there, and I just said I was waiting to use the bathroom. Surprisingly they played it cool, and just said I can use it now and walked off. I used to work nights at a manufacturing plant. I went to the bathroom one night, picked out my favorite stall and sat on the toilet to spend the next 10 minutes contemplating life. After a few minutes, a male janitor walked in and started cleaning the bathroom. Another minute later, another male janitor came in to help. They were talking to each other in Spanish, and then started kissing near the sinks, not realizing anyone was in the bathroom. I just sat there silently for a while, not knowing what to do. After another minute or two of heavy kissing between the two, I decided to make a few noises so that they knew they weren't alone. My toilet seat creaked when I moved. They both stopped their romance session, looked at my stall, giggled, and ran out of the bathroom, leaving all of their cleaning stuff behind. I quickly cleaned up, flushed and ran out. I actually never saw those same janitors again. I was about 8 or 9, and my parents were going to be out of town, so they had me and siblings stay with a family from our church. Once we got to the house, which was really nice by the way, they had one rule: you can play wherever you want, but the basement is off limits. Me being the little bastard that I was, snuck down there first chance I got, and was supremely disappointed to only find rows and rows of plants growing under lights. Our cat was a little late coming home one evening, unusual for him. I went looking for him, calling his name, not massively loudly as it was late at night in a built-up area. As I walked around a corner to a car park, there he was. He looked like he was just having a bit of a chat with a fox. They looked relaxed, facing each other, sitting and chilling out. I called his name, and he looked at me, seemed flustered, looked back at the fox, then me, almost as if he was saying, "He's not with me, I don't know him." I called him again, and he chased the fox into the bushes before trotting over to me. I'm sure I crossed an animal line. Similar story, once I came home late at night when everyone else was asleep. My cat was sitting on the chair on the porch, and there were about 5 or 6 strange cats sitting in the porch or the steps, all facing him. I watched for a moment, and they seemed totally relaxed, all sitting with neutral body language. I took a step forward, they heard me and scattered in an instant, and my cat calmly asked to be let inside. He was fat, irritable, and a badass killer. I from then on assumed him to be some sort of cat mafioso. Happened in New Jersey by the way. Not me but a coworker, several months before I started at the company. Big boss man comes back from a site visit, weekend at his cabin not too far from site. Has someone burn all photos from his camera to a CD, and makes a couple of copies. One copy is with my coworker and another guy looking at photos from site. Suddenly the photos of the site trip ends, and there are topless photos of Big Boss Man's wife at their cabin on the disk. But wait, there's a twist. Another copy of the same set of photos was currently in the boardroom PC where Big Boss Man is showing photos to the client. My coworker doesn't know what to do, tells our lead administrative assistant. She confidently marches into the boardroom and ejects the disk, interrupting the meeting. Big Boss Man asks, "What are you doing?" She simply says, "There's a problem with the disk," and leaves. Edit. Everyone is praising the AA with bigger balls than anyone else. Yes, she's amazing. And no, she never got in trouble. She was the second employee that was hired when Big Boss Man started the company 2 decades ago. This event happened almost 9 years ago now, and she's still an indispensable employee. My coworker who unexpectedly saw the boobs never heard what happened after that. Nobody talked about it, and everyone just carried on like it never happened. Some sort of spy level information swap. A couple of years ago, I was sitting on a bench in a really busy shopping street, just having a drink and just watching people basically. At some point a man and a woman, both dressed really classy, that kinda stood out for me, came walking down the street, both from opposite directions, and almost brushed each other when passing by. In a split second, I saw the woman passing a note, at least it looked like paper to me, to the man. They never looked at each other, didn't slow down their pace, changed posture, facial expression or anything. Just walked straight ahead on their way casually. Just when they passed each other, she slipped a note in his hands, really fast and stealthy. Whatever it was pretty obvious that those two weren't meant to be seen together. The meeting was pre-arranged deliberately on a really busy spot, and whatever they swapped was secret. I'm very sure I wasn't supposed to have seen that, and I probably was the only person who saw that. Freshman year of college, walk into the kitchen area late at night, and there's my girlfriend sitting on the counter, making out with one of my good friends. I just left quietly without them noticing, and cut off all contact with both of them. So, pretty sure I wasn't supposed to see that. Edit. Saw them both together about 20 years later at Costco, so I guess it worked out for them.